Welcome to Tales from a Retro Gamer, episode number 6. Had an amazing weekend, Retropalooza Houston. So, I've wanted to go to this show for several months now, for a couple of reasons. Number one, Retropalooza is always a lot of fun, put on by Billy and Jay, the Game Chasers. They put on a really fun show. Plus, this particular Retropalooza was in Houston, the same time as an incredible Van Gogh exhibit at the Museum of Fine Art, Houston. And so I'm a huge Van Gogh fan, my favorite artist of all time. So I wanted to combine, kill two birds with one stone, do Retropalooza Houston, also check out the Van Goghs. Over 50 Van Goghs at this exhibit. Absolutely couldn't miss it. So I've been making these plans for months. It finally happened. It was an absolute blast. So my wife and I, Carice, we got up early Friday morning, very early. We wanted to get to the exhibit around lunchtime. And so smooth trip. Made it to the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, in really good time. It's about a 4.5 hour drive down to Houston from our home here in Fort Worth. And the Van Gogh exhibit did not disappoint, absolutely. It's not a Van Gogh exhibit without a self-portrait. Probably the most famous Van Gogh painting there was Iris's. There were a lot of beautiful works. It was just amazing. We spent 4 hours at this museum. And at the end of the exhibit, there was an interactive display that everybody absolutely loved. Kids, casual art fans, just curiosity seekers. You could sort of interact with the paintings. There were giant reproductions of Van Gogh paintings you could sort of go inside and pose in. Interactive kids were doing self-portraits. It was so much fun. It was a blast. So even the casual museum goer could enjoy this section of the museum. Anyway, I know you're here for Retropalooza, and I made an absolutely incredible find. I was there to sell books. I was there to market, maybe popularize, get a little bit of word out on the YouTube channel, that kind of thing. Had my books for sale, but just as a fan and a customer, I made an incredible find. I'll get to it in a little bit. And late afternoon after the Van Gogh exhibit, we left. We were going to go to my wife's family's house to visit and have dinner and everything. But we had a little extra time, so we stopped at Half Price Books. If you're a gamer, if you're a comic book fan, anything like that, if you like pulp culture, Half Price Books is an amazing new and used, but mostly used books and records, CDs, video games, and all that kind of stuff, media. Great chain based in Texas, but they're in several other states as well, but there's like 5 in Houston. There was one nearby, so we stopped. And I always go to the video game section. I didn't find any video games, but I did find a bunch of those old Marvel Comics paperbacks, the mass market books that reprint the classic issues of the comics, and found a nice big stack of those. And those are super fun to collect because it's actually theoretically possible to get an entire set, because there's with comics there's thousands and thousands, and there's probably maybe 100 or so Marvel paperbacks. Great fun, and they were only $5 a piece, so that was really cool. I also found, now you guys computer fans may remember this, Micro Adventure number 8, The Big Freeze. I don't know if you remember these books, but as it says, not only is it an action-packed novel, but includes 6 exciting computer programs. Now, I was never a big computer guy growing up. We didn't have a computer in the house, but I couldn't pass up this book. Very cool. And I found the Video Master's Guide to Defender. Now, I love collecting these old paperbacks. I'm probably not going to go through and find tips and tricks on beating Defender. Kind of been down that road before. But I love the color, and I love the diagrams, and just the old school, paperback. Found it for $5, very reasonable. And so that's one I didn't have in my collection, so I was happy to get that. So that night, we went to my wife's cousin's house. Their family was super hospitable, cooked us dinner. They had barbecue for us that night. The next couple of days, we spent the night there. They cooked us breakfast each morning. So cool. Free place to stay. That was a bonus. Thanks, Tim and Susan. Really appreciate the hospitality. The next morning, got up early. The setup at Retropalooza was easy because all I brought was my books to sell and some t-shirts and things like that. So that was no problem. So it took maybe 30 minutes to set up, but I also like to get there a little early to kind of look around the show. And all day Saturday, terrific vendor's room. It was loaded down. There was stores set up there selling, some of their special inventory, maybe rare items and things that, that people at shows would be looking for. There were people that just collectors there with their stuff, buying and selling and trading, some cool 8-bit art, all kinds of really, really big, impressive vendor's room. Having said that, on that Saturday, I made one find, which is a very cool find, pretty interesting item here. Computer and video games, how they work and how to win. And this was a rental, not a rental, but you could check this out at the Austin Public Library, which you can see on the spine here, back when people used to actually check out physical copies of books. Anyway, what I really like about these is they've got the really cool old school art diagrams, and they're how to win at Missile Command, and there's more technical information, how a computer plays games, just some really cool illustrations. No photos, it's all done in art. But very retro, very cool. I love collecting old books about video games and computers. It's just very neat. Only $3, no brainer. Now, the next day was my big fun, which I'll get to in a little bit. So Saturday was a busy day, pretty steady crowd all day. It was really cool catching up with the Game Chasers. I talked to Billy a little bit about the forthcoming Game Chasers movie. It's still in pre-production phase. These things take a long time, very understandable. The movie's due out sometime next year, but obviously they've got a lot of work to do. Talked to Woodhawker a little bit, always good to see him. Caught up with 8-Bit Eric. Eric is one of the nicest guys in YouTube, one of the nicest YouTubers I know, really cool guy. He lives in San Antonio, which is, pretty, not that bad of a drive from San Antonio to Houston, so I usually see him at Texas shows. Always cool catching up with Eric. He's got a really cool channel if you want to check it out. Just look up 8-Bit Eric. A lot of readers stopped by the table throughout the day to say hi. Maybe they'd found one of my books at Barnes & Noble. Maybe they picked up a copy of a book at the show there and got it autographed. Really cool. Pretty steady crowd all day. No complaints there. Now at the show, in addition, to meeting YouTubers and shopping for merchandise, there were a couple of pinball machines set up for display. One in particular, Mr. and Mrs. Pac-Man pinball. That's just not a machine you see very often. There's a lot of barcades and things like that these days, but this particular machine I hadn't seen in years and years, and so they had one there set up on free play, which was really cool. They also had a WWF pinball machine. Very cool, so those were busy all day. And there wasn't really like a big arcade, but there was a console area set up. And what I really liked about the console area, they had an Atari 2600 Junior set up, like a modded one you could put on a modern TV. So there were tournaments throughout the weekend and a lot of console play just for fun. Very cool, busy weekend. The fans had a great time. Lots to do. Cosplayers, including a guy, really nice Mario Kart cosplayer walking around, photo ops, all that good stuff. What really impresses about these cosplayers, the casual ones, they're not really in it for money. There's contests and things, but they just do it for the love and the passion of video games and hanging out with people and just having fun, meeting people with like-minded interests. Always a good time. So fun Saturday. The show was over at 5, and again, we were going to go to my wife's family after, spend the night, but we did have some time, and we went to a place that I didn't even know about before, the Kemah Boardwalk, which is, maybe 30, 40 minutes outside of Houston. And so we went, and it was really nice getting out in the sun, fresh air, there's boats, the ocean. Really nice to be outside after being in the convention all day. Had a blast at the show, but after a while you're ready to get outside, get some exercise, walking around a little bit, get a bite to eat. And I had some fantastic Cajun food while I was there, by the way. And so we're walking around the boardwalk, and we run across a place called Galaxy Adventure Party Room Arcade. Now, I wasn't really in that big of a mood to play video games. We've been at the show all day, but I always have to check these kind of places out, just out of curiosity. What machines are they going to have? Is it possible they'll have an old video game, maybe something from the 80s? Probably not, but you never know. But anyway, I like to look around. So we popped in for a few minutes just to kind of check the place out. Of course, we were in ticket redemption hell. All these new big fancy machines that people play just to get the tickets to win the prizes. Fine, whatever people enjoy. And some of those machines are actually kind of fun. When my kids were little, we would go, and they were always excited to win prizes and things. Whatever, not really my thing. But they did have a Time Crisis 4 machine. I remember Time Crisis from playing it on my PlayStation, the light gun game. It was a lot of fun. So at least I saw a throwback, something sort of at least retro influenced Time Crisis 4. Kind of cool to see that. It's always cool to see a throwback to my era of gaming. On Sunday, we got to the show just a few minutes early. Didn't really have to do any setup or anything, and I figured I'd seen everything in the vendor's room, so really wasn't much more for me to look at. But I noticed something I didn't see on Saturday. There was a pretty prominent vendor there, a guy that owns Game Bros. It's a local video game store. They were set up. Well, they had a ColecoVision on their table, sort of standing on its side, a boxed ColecoVision. I probably breezed right past it on Saturday and didn't even notice it because I already have a boxed ColecoVision. I figured it would be really expensive because they are, and typically already had one. And the box I noticed it was kind of torn up, so I didn't really pay much. I just breezed right past it, I'm sure. However, that afternoon on Sunday, after the show had kind of slowed down a little bit, and I was just sort of wandering around looking. Thanks to my wife, by the way, Carice. Anytime at these shows, when she is with me, she's willing to sit at the table, answer questions, sell things, even when I'm get up and take a break. And so anyway, hats off. And just in general, she designed new T-shirts for the show, and very cool, very cool. She also made me some new business cards for this year. Very much appreciated. Anyhow, I took a little close. Something didn't look quite right about this ColecoVision, so I took a little closer look at it, and I noticed something strange about the box. It's purple. Now, the standard ColecoVision box is sort of a gray or silver, and that's the one most everybody has. But then this was purple, and I was like, what in the world? I don't know what's going on here, but that's not the one I had. That's not the one I've always seen. And then I looked a little closer, and the controllers are the old ColecoVision prototype controllers with a little spinner wheel, and those were never actually produced for mass consumption. And so I thought, that's really bizarre. What is this? What's going on? So I asked the vendor there to hold it for me because I didn't want it to sell out from under me if I decided I want it. And so what I did was, see, I'd never seen this before. I didn't know anything about it. I'm still learning things new, even about my favorite console, the ColecoVision. So I called my friend Leonard Herman. He's a video game historian, the author of Phoenix, the world's first full-fledged history book on video games. Called him. I said, what is the deal with the ColecoVision in the purple box with the prototype controllers? So he explained it to me, and he sent me a link to a website. Back in the day, early 80s, when the ColecoVision was in production, this particular ColecoVision system in the purple box, the prototype box, would be sent home with employees, Coleco employees, to sort of check out the system, to test the system or whatever. So there weren't very many of these made. So when he told me that, I did a little more research, and I figured this thing would be several $100s. I went back, talked to the guy. He goes, for you, he had seen me at shows and stuff, and he knows I do the books. He goes, for you, $40. And I was like, sold. And then we got to talking a little bit, and I said, well, how about if I just trade you one of my books? And so it just so happened he didn't have the 100 Greatest Console Video Games, 1977 through 1987. I offered him one of the SNES Omnibus books, but he already has those. So he was very happy to get this book. And so obviously I was happy with the trade. And so I looked inside the box as well. It appears just to be a standard ColecoVision. The controllers are just the normal ones you see without the little wheels. So that was a little disappointing when I was looking at it, but still, the box is amazing, really great find. Now, like I said, you'll see the box has some tears, and it's pretty ragged, but overall, it's still, intact, and it's so freaking rare that it's a great display piece regardless. And as a bonus, it's kind of funny, so boxed with the ColecoVision when it was new was Donkey Kong, that great arcade port. Well, whoever had owned this ColecoVision had taken out Donkey Kong and put in the much harder to find Star Wars the arcade game. So that was kind of a nice bonus to get with the system, as if I needed anything else, right? Anyway, great find. Once again, had a great time at the show. The Van Gogh exhibit was amazing. Retropalooza was a ton of fun, as always, and it was great seeing friends. Thanks to everyone who came by and bought a book. Thanks for everybody that just came up to say hey. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing. If you could click subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. Click a thumbs up on the video. In the comments below, what conventions have you been to recently? Have you made any incredible finds? Just comment below. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.